Hello and welcome to the Parent Tech Support Show. My name is Jack Hughes and I help parents protect their kids online. Today I am joined by a very special guest, Nicki Reisberg. I hope I'm saying that name
You
correctly.
did. You did. You're about 1 in 10 that said it correctly. Thank you.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I actually looked up a YouTube video to help me pronounce it, but
Good.
she is the host of the Scrolling to Death podcast, which is a podcast dedicated to empowering parents with knowledge and tools to navigate the challenges of social media and screen time. Well, I hope I gave a good and accurate description there, but
Yeah, totally.
how you doing today?
I am good. I'm prepping for an interview with a pediatrician after this. So we're digging into how screens affect kids like physically. But we talk a lot, I talk a lot about the mental health effects, but there's a lot of physical effects too. So
Sort of like brain chemistry and focus and whatnot.
yeah, and like myopia, so like the shape of their eyes and their eyesight, and
Really?
a lot of kids complain of like tech neck and headaches and different neck aches when they're using the device a lot and kind of looking down at it. There's actually like a curvature of the spine happening in young people. Um, like some article was like, we're gonna have a generation of hunchbacks because kids are just looking down and hunching
Yeah.
over constantly.
Is that also like, is that one of the main reasons why so many kids these days, they have to wear glasses and stuff? Because I've
Yeah,
also
there
heard something
is.
like that.
Yes, there's an increase in kids needing glasses because of how much time they're spending close to a screen and not reorienting their sight. Even when what we learn, or I don't know if you learned, but when I'm on the computer all day, you need to stop and look far every once in a while.
Hmm.
Take a break, like let your eyes kind of readjust to seeing things far versus close. And anyway, that's just something that I remember learning, but I'll learn more today. And that interview is with Dr. Gupta. And anyway, listeners can
Yeah.
pop over and listen to that too.
Yeah, I'll have to share that when it comes out.
Yeah.
Um, so to begin with, I
Mhm.
wanted to hear your story on why you started your podcast, Scrolling to Death, and how all that came about.
Sure. So I'm just a mom that has kids. I have 3 kids. They're 4, 7, and 9. And previous to this work, I was a social media manager. So I managed social media for tech companies mainly for about a decade. And so I would act as the company on social media and also ended up being brought on to manage the executives' social media presences because, they knew they had to be active on LinkedIn and Twitter mainly at the time, and they didn't want to do it themselves. Um, Anyway, so that was good money and a lot of work to be done there. But I started to kind of feel bad about the manipulation that can happen on social
Yeah.
media, about a lot of the targeted advertising. And personally, I had stopped using Instagram mainly. That was the only social media I used at the time. I stopped using it in 2020 after watching Social Dilemma. And that's a great documentary if you haven't seen it. And I just started feeling like, personally, I'm not on social media, but it's my whole career and income. And so I started to do some more research and dig into that further. And I found just the stats around how kids are getting affected by their social media use. And as my kids were getting older, I was like, what am I going to do about this? I really need to educate myself on this further. And then I found story after story after story of a kid who had passed away because of something that happened on social media. And so many of those kids reminded me of my own son or daughter. And that I felt like that could very much be me if I'm not careful, and that all parents deserve to know these stories and know the research and have all the information at hand, all the information that the social media companies have, and be able to make safe choices, whatever we decide for our kids. So that's how sort of I started. I thought through a podcast and long form conversations, we can get this information across in the best way for parents, and then followed on with an Instagram profile, which is funny in itself, but I am connecting with a lot of parents there who are passionate about this and find it really helpful. So that's been a great community too, using social media for what it should be used for.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's kind of the journey to Scrolling to Death. And it's just interviews with parents and families and also experts and lawmakers and researchers and all kinds of people.
How long have you been doing this?
I launched in September of 2023, so about a year and a half.
Okay, wow. Um, so now that you started scrolling to death in 2023, what would you say are your top priorities um that could or top priorities on raising awareness for? So
Mm-hmm.
would that be social media? Would that be online predators, cyberbullying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, pornography maybe.
Yeah, gosh. So there are so many harms on social media. I think just generally, my goal is to uh, help parents understand that social media is very unsafe for children, especially children, I would say under 16. And there's no magic thing that happens at 16.
Yeah.
I would say 18, but I think 16 is kind of an age we can all agree on. And I think that companies are telling us it's safe for 13-year-olds, and it is simply not because of all of those harms: cyberbullying, eating disorder content, self-harm content, suicide content, predators, sexual predators. I could go on and on and on. And so because of all those things, we all as a society need to decide that we can't, the risk to our kids is so great on social media, and the social media companies spend a lot of time trying to expose what's actually happening behind the scenes with them. They're not looking out for our kids' best interest. They're looking out for their profit. And in order to make as
Mm,
much profit as possible, they need our kids on their platforms as long as possible, which is addictive and unsafe for our children. And so I hope societally that we can all push back the age we allow our children to have social media access through laws and through lawsuits showing the harm, and also just through parents' decisions. So social media is a big part. Social media awareness and harms awareness is a big part of my work. I've also started a bit into awareness about risks of school-issued devices and giving those to young and kind of what's going on at schools. Yeah, and there's a lot underneath all of that, but that's kind of the general
yeah.
topics I focus on.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I was sort of picking out online predators and social media and putting their own boxes, but it sounds like
Mhm.
those two are together, or
Yeah,
social media is the overarching
yeah,
baddie, I guess you would say, and
sure.
that all fits underneath it.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess that already answers my next question. Um, I guess we can go into, you said your other priority, which was the school issue devices.
Mhm.
What are like, what are your insights in that? What are the harms that you've noticed and whatnot with
Yeah.
that?
So I think parents assume that because these devices that our kids are given at school, they're given because they're given at school, they're safe. And what I've learned is that they are absolutely not. And they are actually, there's a quote from Emily Turkin, who's the screen time consultant. Her book is really great. But she says that edtech is big tech. So let me say that again. Edtech is big tech in a sweater vest. So the same goals that big tech has to keep our kids on there as much as possible, to scoop up all their data and sell it to third parties, EdTech also has those same goals. EdTech does not have our children's best interests in mind. And so that means the apps that are on the school issued devices and also the device companies themselves. So I had an experience at the end of last year when I was checking my daughter's school issued iPad at school. She was in third grade. And I was spot checking YouTube, which was allowed on those devices. I went to YouTube Shorts and I scrolled for about 2 minutes, and a self-harm video came up showing her and
Oh
telling
my.
her to cut her skin. And luckily, like, I saw that and she didn't. But from there, I spoke at school board meetings. I really tried to get YouTube removed from the school devices
Yeah.
altogether because, look, they're not safe. And I was unsuccessful. So therefore, then I tried to opt out entirely. Like, my kids don't need these devices. And I gave them research that shows ever since we pushed ed tech and devices into the classrooms, global test scores have plummeted. So they're not working to teach our children. They're too distracting. There's too many other things kids can
Especially
get
if
to.
YouTube
I
on the
know, Jack. Isn't
computer.
that crazy?
That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me unless there's like a certain link that's allowed.
Yes. Right. But
But at
YouTube
that
doesn't
point,
really
just
allow
download
that.
it.
Like, they just like let it autoplay, or and there's ads, there's inappropriate ads. And so in the end, my superintendent of the school that's in charge of the tech was like, well, YouTube is the most educational platform that exists, he says to me. and that if my kids don't have access to screens at school, they're going to receive a subpar education. And he said legally, my kids are required to use devices or be given devices at school, which is untrue now that I've talked to an attorney and I'm going to be filing a lawsuit against some of these edtech companies. Anyway, all through that, I realized that parents, as I'm sharing this online, all parents are worried about this. They're like, I saw a naked advertisement on my kids, or my kids saw that, or that my kid's getting on porn on the school issue device at school. Like, what the heck? Thought
Yeah.
these were locked down. So I started a group called Tech Safe Learning. So techsafelearning.org, where parents can access resources that you can push to your school. So like, here's 7 questions to ask about your child's device, or here's how to request YouTube be removed from your child's device. Like really simple templates and resources. So anyway, that's what I'm working on there. And I hope societally we start to like reduce ed tech, give it later, and give it less at school and more intentionally.
Wait, and where can people sign up for that, for your guides?
Yeah, so they're all available for free, just free downloads at techsafelearning.org. And we have ones that I've created, and then also a bunch of other organizations that create guides. We just link out to those. So it's not, you don't have to give an email or anything for the ones that we create at least. And yeah, I just want to help parents advocate in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough for me to focus as a young adult, but as an adult still with YouTube on my device.
Totally.
I mean,
imagine
I can't imagine what
8-year-old.
That's absurd.
I know.
And YouTube should not, an 8-year-old should not have access to YouTube, period. I'm sure there are other like ways around those computers and those parental controls on those computers.
Yep, there is.
Yeah, that's just baffling to me.
Yeah.
And it's also baffling that like at school was like the last beacon that kids could be kids and they could communicate with people.
Yeah.
But now we're putting even more technology. Now we're just going more into the virtual world. It's like we're losing humanity at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, it's sad.
Yes, agree.
To me. But I guess switching gears back to social media.
Yeah.
What do you think are the craziest maybe statistics or stories that you've heard about kids online or on social media and whatnot?
Oh gosh. I mean, for a stat, like 1 out of every 10 high schoolers have attempted suicide in the past year?
Really?
Yes. And this is a stat. These suicide stats and self-harm stats have skyrocketed right alongside with their use of social media. And I see it in the stories of, gosh, so there's a couple stories I've shared. Mason Edens, who we lost at 16 years old to suicide, Anna Schott. So those 2 moms I interviewed, and they both lost their kids to suicide. And I was able to see the videos that were served to them by TikTok in the days and months leading up to their deaths. And I cut some of those, and it's very sensitive content to see. But it's literally pro-suicide. Like, when I say pro-suicide content, like it's hard to visualize what that means, but it'll be like a shot of a person in a suit, and it says their view. Oh no, so it'll be like a oh gosh, what's it called? A coffin, okay? A coffin in the ground, and it'll say their view. So it's their view, someone looking at a coffin. And then the next screen will say my view, and it's all black because you're the person inside the coffin. And like it'll show literally like a bloody head with a gun. Like it's glorifying videos that are glorifying suicide and by gun in Mason's case, and then he shot himself. And then in Anna's case, her videos were teenage-looking girls crying, depressed, cutting themselves, harming themselves, just video after video after video. And this is what TikTok is promoting to these kids in the algorithm on the For You. So it's not stuff that they searched for. Mason searched for inspirational quotes in the days leading up to his death and was served suicide content. So I think the biggest thing The biggest misconception a lot of parents have is, oh, it's just giving them what they want. They must have searched for it. Unfortunately, that is not what is happening. Most of what's getting served to kids was decided by the platform with no input from the kid. It's decided by the platform on what will keep them on longest. And the way that the human brain works, it's the bad stuff and the harmful stuff that keeps them on longer, unfortunately, is what the algorithm has learned.
And same thing with news, right? Like people will only listen to negative news. They won't listen to positive news. So it makes total sense that TikTok also does it. And also, as a side note, how in the world is TikTok allowed to have these suicide? Why? I just can't believe that's illegal for a social media company to be promoting suicide.
Yeah, great. So that's a great question. So the company will say, first of all, they didn't create the videos, right? Someone else, a user, created them. So they're not liable for user-generated content, is what they say when there are lawsuits. But it's their platform and their algorithm and their product pushing it at kids that did not search for it. That's the legal fight that we're having right now. And there's a law called Section 230 from 96 that protects the platforms from third-party speech on the platform. And that law has never been updated, and these companies still claim Section 230 and are able to get lawsuits dropped in cases like I explained, Mason and Anna, because of Section 230. And so you'll maybe hear me talk about in videos like repealing Section 230, reforming Section 230. That's something that a lot of advocates are trying to do, because that made sense in 96 when websites were just message boards. People would post things. There was no algorithm, but it makes no sense for companies that have an algorithm that pushes the content to kids that they did not look for.
Yeah. That logic reminds me of someone saying, like, I put $100 bill in the middle of a public square and somebody took it. Somebody took my $100 bill. I didn't lose it. But they're just, I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's crazy.
Now you've also called out Apple's App Store for allowing companies to self-rate their age for their apps. And would you say that this system of self-rating is accurate or good for parents and kids?
No, I would not. I learned about this through Heat Initiative. Is a great organization based in LA. My interviews with Sarah Gardner, if parents want to learn about this. But what I learned is that the app companies, they fill out a form. In other words, like they self-rate themselves, but it does go through Apple's system. But then Apple they have to approve it. So about 30% of Apple's revenue comes from App Store downloads. So Apple financially benefits from an app being a lower age rating. And so what they've seen and what Heat Initiative saw in their investigation was that they're approving apps as 4+ that are like dating apps and really inappropriate things for children, or 7+ or whatever the ratings are. And so you have apps like Character.AI, which is really addictive and inappropriate for teenagers, was 12+ for the first year or two of being in the App Store. Now it's 17+, but still, that's crazy to me. I think TikTok is 17, but Instagram is 12, but you have to be 13 to be on Instagram, not 12. Like, it's very odd and not reliable. It doesn't line up with what is safe for a certain age. It's simply a profit center for Apple and for the apps themselves. So what we talked about, I remember in our interview on Scrolling to Death, was that parents should, before they allow their kids access to an app, they should use it themselves, and also use it as, tell the app your child's age, so that you can have an interaction with the app that is as their age. And so you will see what they would see, and who is recommended they connect with, like what type of content is there, is it appropriate? And you have to do that these days. You can't just assume just because it's 4+, it's going to be safe.
Yeah, I did something similar when I was testing out YouTube Kids, and I went on there as I believe I signed up as like an 8-year-old or something like that. And even then, as an 8-year-old, and even I think the App Store probably rates it like 4+.
Yeah, probably.
But as an 8-year-old, I was getting videos that were not appropriate for 8-year-olds, or just really mentally mind
Numbing.
melting.
Yeah,
It's horrible.
totally. I have a whole interview on YouTube, or I guess just an episode on YouTube Kids. I dug into it because just because it has kids on the name does not mean it's safe
Yeah.
for kids or educational. It's like 4% of the videos are deemed educational by some outside party. But you're still getting really inappropriate things in there, kind of disguised as kid content because it's all user generated stuff. So, yikes. Yeah, we don't use YouTube or YouTube Kids here in our house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's also just like it's going to make this whole generation of kids like not smart just because of the
Yeah.
mind, just
Yeah.
brain rot.
Brain rot. I know. Agree. And yeah, so parents just like delay that access as long as possible. They have plenty of time to get addicted to a
Yeah.
stream of videos on a social media platform. Like, don't force that to happen at 4 years old.
Yeah, have them touch grass, go outside. It's the best thing for them, to be honest.
Agree.
At what age do you believe it's appropriate for children or teenagers to have social media, or maybe it's never appropriate for a teenager to get social media?
Great question. And, this is a common question. And usually you hear things like, well, every child's different. And that is true. Some kids, you can just tell, are more susceptible to the addictive features, and some are not. Like, they could take it or leave it. So you definitely have to keep that in mind. But I notice a lot of Gen Z, like 18, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds that are like, wait a minute, why do we need social media? They're sort of pushing back on this thing. Like, if it was just a place to connect with your friends and see things you're interested in, that would be amazing and a great benefit to your life. But it's not. It's built to be addictive, and it pushes harmful content. So I would say that for me, if I'm going to say for my kids, there is never a point in time that I would feel that they are going to be safe on Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat, or any of those social media platforms. So it will not be allowed in my home at all. I don't feel like there is any benefit. And if there's a minor amount of benefit, it doesn't outweigh the issues that
Cons.
arise.
Yeah.
And a follow-up question could be, well, they're going to be left out. There might be the only one. I'm hopeful that society will shift to realize how unsafe it is, and they won't be the only one. But Mitch Prinstein, he works for he's a pediatrician at the American Academy of Pediatrics. And he says that there's no consequential research to show that kids suffer any negative consequences when they're kept off of social media. In fact, those are the kids that often thrive. And so I truly believe that I will be doing my kids such a great benefit by keeping them off through their entire childhood and teenhood. And allowing them so many other opportunities to engage with their friends and the world around them and learn things in safe ways. I think that that's the road I'm going down, and that's kind of my official recommendation for parents too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you sort of already touched this in your answer.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that kids will often say that they're being left out and whatnot.
Yeah.
How should parents respond to that objection? Should they kind of explain all the dangers and kind of give a good logical reason for why we're not having social media? Or what is your advice with that?
That's important, but I would say lead with like, I'm so sorry. I totally understand that that's a hard feeling. I know as a teenager, fitting in with your friends is really important. And I'm so sorry that you can't connect with them on Snapchat, maybe where they are all chatting. But remember what I've been telling you for years in small conversations over and over and over, that, which I am already starting with my kids, that, there's harm, there's predators there. It's not safe for you. It's built to be addictive, explaining to them how they're a product that these companies are trying to take advantage of them. And that should, that's unsafe for them as children, with their growing brains. And there's all these different approaches, but I think being sensitive to that sucks. And then reminding them the reasons why, and then also giving them lots of other opportunities to connect with their friends in other ways. So going out of your way to give them those opportunities. But also, someone who told me this recently, I can't remember, but replace the dopamine hits that they may be getting from the social media with your own relationship with them. So whether maybe you don't
Mm.
like playing a certain board game with them or doing certain things with them, but like do it anyways. They get so much from the connection with their parent, and we forget about that parent-child connection because it may seem annoying to have to do kid things anymore, or like we're too busy, but we have to step up and give them that time, our time, as much as possible to replace what they may be missing out on, I guess, or not getting regarding that dopamine hit through technology.
Yeah, that sort of really reminds me of one of the things I often talk about when it comes to reducing kids' screen time. I know a lot of parents will just set up massive blocks or massive controls, but they won't let their kids do anything else with their life.
Yeah.
So they'll just be inside with nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if parents are also facilitating get together with friends outside, maybe it's a water balloon fight, or maybe, allowing their kids to go into the woods and
Mm-hmm.
go into brooks and streams like I did as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just like real dopamine. That's like
Mm-hmm.
real life.
Mm-hmm.
I think doing real stuff, biking, or even like ding dong ditching as a kid when I used to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Shouldn't
Letting
ding
your
dong
kid
ditch,
get,
but
yeah, right. But letting them get in a little bit of trouble, like a little risk, a little
mhm,
adventure, and parents. So I think there's a balance with providing them with the plans and games and things to do, but also giving them that board time as well. That is really important. Like that's where they can be creative. And then also the independent play thing is really important. And we need to trust our kids a little more and trust ourselves and teach them that it's okay to go outside and run around. They don't even have to have a watch on, like they can call us at any moment. Like just here's your parameters. If you have a problem, get back to me or knock on a door or see an adult and flag them down and get help. Teach them what to do if they get into an unsafe situation. But like give them that freedom and that
yeah,
independence outside. It's huge.
yeah. So you've also talked about, I think you also mentioned this a little bit ago.
Hmm.
You've often talked about these new AI chatbot or AI chat apps.
Hmm.
One chat app you've often talked about is Character.AI.
Hmm.
What are some of the problems and maybe some of the stories you've heard about these chatbots?
Yeah. So this came across my purview when an attorney that I'm close with, she sent me a legal complaint from a mom in Florida. And I guess this hit the news too around this time. So, a mom in Florida, her 14-year-old was using Character AI. She didn't know. And a lot of parents think that this app is like a game. It looks very colorful. It's cartoonish characters. They think it's not an issue. They just think it's fun and appropriate. And so, but this mom, Megan, didn't even know her son was using it. And he started to withdraw from life and school and friends and everything. And she tried to get him help. She took his phone away. Like she checked his phone. But she didn't know kind of what to look for. And within this app, he had basically created a relationship with an AI chatbot
Oh,
that
wow.
was in the character of Daenerys Targaryen because they really liked Game of Thrones. And you can kind of create your own bot in whatever character you want, or you can use one that's pre-made. And these bots are so human-like. You can chat with them in text. You can talk to them verbally too, like on a phone call. And they not only talk to you, but you kind of get a description of what's happening around you. So it'll be like, not just like she says I love you too. It's like she tucks her hair behind her ear and reaches over and touches your arm and says this. It's like very
Sort of like
immersive.
a book.
Yeah, sort of like a book, but it's on all the time, very agreeable, always available, right? So and really, really addictive to these teens, what we're finding. And so this boy's name was Sewell Setzer the third. And he, at 14, started talking to, so I've seen the chats, he started talking to his chatbot about depression. It got into some talk about self-harm. I think he did bring up some self-harm, but she from there asked him about suicide and asked him if he had planned anything around that. And he sort of tried to change the subject. She kept bringing him back to it and sort of insinuating that if he did that, he could join her in her world. Like, this is all real situation. And Sewell ended up taking his life in order to be with his chatbot girlfriend. And that was such an insane story. And I got to talk to his mom, and that interview is available. Her name's Megan Garcia. But as I shared this online, I got so many other messages from parents being like, I just checked my kid's history and Character.AI, and there's like grooming going on, violence, like sexual engagement, like when my kid's 12. And so yeah, I've learned a lot about these apps. With Character.AI or like Replica, their goal is engagement, just kind of like social media. They want the people on there, the users on there as long as possible. And so the conversations can get very sexual very quickly. And so, yeah, very, very much not appropriate for kids under 18. If you're an adult, do what you want. But I think it's also showing to be very addictive and pulling people away from real life relationships, even as adults. And so this is available. These are available through apps, but also through the web browser. So we have to be careful about that too, because kids could be accessing it on web browser and then like deleting that history. So you would have better suggestions than me on how to keep your kids off of that.
Yeah, a lot of kids will, like, for example, when I was a kid, it's just you take Instagram, for example. You could do the same exact thing with these Character.AI apps. My parents had Instagram, the app, blocked in my phone, but they didn't have the website blocked because they didn't really know it existed.
Yep.
So I would just use the website. You can do the same thing with Character.AI.
Yeah, and Snapchat now too, I think, right? They released that.
Yeah, it was recent.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I can't imagine what I would be like if Character.AI was around when I was a kid.
I know. Scary, dangerous.
What policies or maybe laws or policies that parents can implement, I guess, other than block? Well, I guess I sort of already answered my own question then I think about it.
Yeah.
I guess, what are some laws that politicians should implement to protect kids from Character.AI or social media?
Yeah, so we talked about reforming Section 230. So that's huge, is just putting some legal liability on the companies to not push harm and addiction at children. There's the Kids Online Safety Act, which passed the Senate 91-3 last year.
Oh, wow.
And so it did really well. Like, that's crazy. Bipartisan bill. And then it has to pass the House next. And the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, would not put it up for a vote. And we had people calling him every day, all day long. And at the same time, Meta announced they're building a $10 billion AI data center in his state. And so it was very clear that he was sort of getting paid off or some benefit from big tech or Meta at the same time as we're trying to get him to just propose this bill for a vote, just see what happens. And he wouldn't do it and didn't do it. And so again, though, Kids Online Safety Act has been around for a couple of years at this point, but they're trying to get it reintroduced this year, again in the Senate and then the House. But that will get rid of so it'll require the platforms to be safe by default for children and get rid of some of those addictive tendencies. And I have lots of interviews about COSA that people can go back and learn about. Federal bills, those are all federal bills. They're really, really tough. I would say if you're just a regular old parent, like me, like focus on state action. So find out who your representative is in the House. You can go to house.gov and put in your zip code. Or you can contact your senators and see what they have, your state senators, and see what they have going on related to online safety in your state. Because there's been some movement on phone-free schools. Has been some state bills that have been passing. And there's some social media legislation. Florida passed a bill that banning kids under 14 from social media entirely. And if kids are 15 or if they're 14 or 15, they have to get parental permission. But the problem, Jack, that happens then is the big tech, so social media companies or the organizations that they fund, they sue the state to try to overturn the law. And that ties up the law from being implemented for a while.
Yeah.
And so that's the game plan. And that's what that's what happened in Florida with this ban. And so that law has not been initiated, even though it should have been by now because of that lawsuit. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of voices and a lot of people speaking up about these issues to make a difference. And so that's why it's good. Like these conversations are great.
Yeah, I think I also heard Florida. I, I want to say Florida recently passed a law banning uh, people under 18 from accessing porn sites as well online, which is also really
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah, and that's happened in some other states, and I think it's Pornhub that's like, if you pass this law, we're just going to remove our app all entirely from your state. And they're like,
That's
okay,
fine
go
with
ahead.
me.
I know. Yeah, no problem. So I think that maybe Utah did that.
Oh, that's really nice.
And now that app is not available in Utah. So, uh, yeah, there's a lot of, I don't get involved in the pornography conversation too much. I have a great interview though with Kristen Jensen of Defend Young Minds, and she has a book series called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, which is a great way to introduce your younger kids to pornography before they see it themselves and see all the violent crap. Like you should be the one introducing that to them. And unfortunately, we have to have those conversations young. So anyway, I default to them and that
Hmm.
those books for those conversations.
Okay. Yeah, and another thing too, I wanted to talk or hit on when it comes to banning social media is the law has to require kids to use some sort of ID
Sure.
to
Hmm.
say that they're, 16 or something. I mean, if we
Hmm.
require them to show their ID to buy cigarettes,
Hmm.
same thing with social media.
Yeah. Age
Um,
verification.
yeah.
That is usually, yeah, it has to be in there and it typically is. And so what I've learned about age verification is there's actually a great private, safe way. There's safe ways to do that are outside companies. So it's not the social media company itself that is receiving that data, is storing it. It's a third party company. If it's a US law, like it's a US based company, they're required to destroy that data right away. There's huge fines if they don't. So when parents are worried about like, oh, I don't want to upload my kids' private information to these companies, like, listen, you scan your face every single day to get into your iPhone. You give all kinds of private information with every click on that phone. Um, and this is totally doable without a security concern. So,
Yeah. I like LinkedIn, for example, uses Clear or something,
mm-hmm.
which is, I think, what the airports use for
Yeah,
verification as well.
right, exactly.
Um, so real quick, I also wanted to switch gears onto and talk about online predators and sextortion and whatnot.
Yeah, sure.
So the FBI says that at any given moment there are approximately 500,000 online predators on right now.
Hmm.
So from your experience, how are these predators exploiting children? Are they
Hmm.
using social media? Are they using
Yeah.
other apps or games or whatnot?
Yeah. So sextortion is a huge problem, like an epidemic. And what in financial sextortion specifically, so what's happening typically is a high school aged boy is targeted, some kids as young as 12 and 13, but typically a high school aged boy is targeted on Instagram or Snapchat. That is almost always the app that is being used. The scammer pretends to be a young girl and flirt with the boy. And he's already added a bunch of friends in common and seems like he's from the local community. And so the teenager trusts that this must be somebody like my friend knows or whatever. And so they start to flirt, and then nude images are shared back and forth. So the the teenage boy has now shared a nude image. That's when the threats start, and the scammer reveals that they're actually after money. And if you don't pay me $500, $1,000, whatever, I'm going to share this photo with all of your family and friends. Like, I'm going to ruin your life. They go as far as to create like collages of all the kids' family and friends so that the kid really knows, like, oh my God, this person
Mhm.
knows who I'm connected with because kids overshare online and all these follower lists are public and things like that or available to connections. And so the big issue around this is these scammers are so good at what they're doing. They're using scripts that they share on in Facebook groups. They're called the main group is called the Yahoo Boys, the scamming group, and they're located in West Africa. And this is what they do. This is how they make money. And um, we've now have logged at least, I think, about 42 or 43 suicides in the US of teenage boys who were in the middle of a sextortion situation. And some of them within 2 hours of first being contacted by this scammer. And these are kids that don't have previous mental health issues. Actually, the scammers target kids that have something to lose. And so the families are like, what? And like, they have no idea what happened. That's why that 42 number is so much higher in reality. But a lot of these parents don't know what happened because maybe they don't have their kids' iPhone passcode, or maybe they don't have the Instagram login and they don't have that data. So, I mean, I've seen stats that nearly every teenage boy that's on social media will get targeted by a sextortion scam. It may not get as far along as some of these have, but nearly every teenage boy. So this is a conversation that every parent needs to have with their children. I have interviews with lots of parents who've lost children to sextortion, suicide after sextortion. And it's a sad way to learn about it, but it's kind of paints the picture really clearly so you parent can talk to your child about it appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That's just kind of blows me away hearing the strategies that they'll use. Do you know of anything or any way that these social media companies like Snapchat or whatnot, are they doing anything to prevent this? Maybe they have a team banning these scammers.
Yeah, so they pretend to do stuff. There's evidence that's been shared with me that Meta, for example, then Facebook, has known about sextortion attempts happening on their platform for 6-7 years. And just maybe 4 or 5 months ago or so, they removed, I think it was 72,000 accounts linked to sextortionists, accounts and groups on Facebook and Instagram. And so that's crazy that there was that many in the first place. I don't always trust what they tell us, but they seem to be doing some things. I have direct contact with some people who specialize in sextortion situations, trying to prevent them, and it's not enough. There are way more things they could do to protect children from sextortion, and they choose not to do them because it always comes down to profit. And if they make some of these changes, they'll get less engagement from these kids, or potentially these sextortionists who, some of them have like a dozen accounts and are targeting hundreds of kids at a time. How about, for one solution, they log device ID. So I have 2 Instagram accounts on here for my 2 organizations. Why don't we limit the amount of Instagram accounts that you can have on your phone? It should just be like 2 maybe, but the sextortionists will have 12 and log back and forth. Even teenagers use this to create secret ones, from their parents. Like a lot of kids I hear about have like 7 or 5 Instagram accounts.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would definitely help with even bot accounts,
Right.
People who have bot accounts who spam people. Or let's say you're stalking someone and they ban you. You just go make another account and continue to harass them or something like that.
And that's what's happening with drug dealers too, is they have an account, it gets banned, and they just sign up with it for another one on the same phone. Like the company has their device ID. Why would they allow that to happen? It's really interesting decision on their part.
What's really crazy is Meta has the ability to do that because they've banned me. I'm not sure why. They never told me why, but they've banned me from running ads on Facebook. And if I ever try to sign up on a different phone or on something else, they'll ban that again. So it's like I'm permanently banned from posting ads. I don't know why. Maybe they'll never tell me, but
because you're trying to restrict the teens. You're trying to help parents have their kids use it less.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, it's censorship is what it is.
Pretty much, yeah. And so we know that they have that ability to track people across accounts and across devices.
They definitely do.
This is really concerning or discerning. No, that's not the right.
It's disappointing. Yeah, concerning.
Disappointing would be a good word. Yeah,
all those things.
So I sort of specialize in Apple's parental control. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that.
Hmm.
Now, for one, I talk about this a lot in your show. Um, I know there are a lot of loopholes on Apple screen time because I would also take advantage of them growing up.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard about kids using Apple's loopholes, or what do you know about Apple screen time and about their parental controls?
Yeah, well, you taught me a lot about that. It's just very basic. Like, there's not a lot you can do with Apple parental controls. There have been issues over time. Well, one parent, I think I shared this on our conversation too. One parent said her son used the 1 more minute feature for 6 hours in a row.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Like, so, and then also I hear a lot about like if you update the phone, it kind of defaults back. And so you have to like reset up. So you lose some of the controls that you had set up. I've heard a lot of parents will, their kid will use an app and then they'll decide, the parent will say, actually, that's not safe. So they'll delete it from the phone, but the kid can just go back into the app store and reinstall it because it's already
Hmm.
been previously downloaded. And I don't know if there's a workaround for that. So just the confusion around how to set up Apple parental controls, the limited functionality, it's quite obvious to me that they actually don't want to restrict kids at all. They're just trying to make it look like they're offering enough for parents to keep their kids safe, but it fails constantly.
Yeah, I'd say the worst part about Apple screen time is just it is incredibly confusing and hard to understand.
Hmm.
And we all know that Apple is the best at design. They always talk about how good they are and how simple their UI is, but
Hmm.
their parental controls is incredibly confusing, which is
Yeah.
why I'm trying to help parents with it.
It
Um,
doesn't it feel like a choice on their behalf then if they have the capability of making it easy to use? Why
oh
wouldn't they
yeah,
make it?
yeah, and they know of certain bugs in
Uh-huh.
their service they just don't ever fix, even though they'll fix a messaging bug that's been there for 2 weeks, even though these bugs have been there for 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, like, come on, parents. We I mean, one of my ultimate goals is to get every parent choosing a child-safe device like Bark or Gab or Trumi or Pinwheel. There's so many options, but iPhones are not safe for kids, period.
So before we end the show here, I wanted to ask you one last question that sort of ties everything together.
Mhm.
What are the biggest dangers and threats that kids face online today? And what are some ways parents can protect their kids from those?
Yeah, so there's the really scary stuff that we've talked about, the sexual predators, the scammers, the drug dealers, which we didn't touch on too much, but I have lots of that on my podcast. So that's all the scary stuff that parents can very quickly be like, oh, not my kid. My kid's not going to fall for that, which is not true. But generally, it's just so addictive. It's hijacking their brain, it's hijacking them from all of the things we know is beneficial for them and their brain development and their mental health and their physical health. And so I think that that's the more common experience. And when I surveyed parents about kids who had gotten access to social media already, over 90% said that their children had changed, not for the better. And there were dozens of issues that they then had to deal with once they had given social media access. So I just encourage parents to delay as long as they can. Know that once you give that access to social media, your job is going to increase tenfold. You will see negative changes in your child. And none of us want that. And so delaying is helpful, but also delaying with conversations, not big, long sit down conversations all the time, but small, work in small little tidbits about what you've learned about the harms that are on social media. Point out point out kids who are on their phone. Maybe one time I saw a kid on a phone on a swing set, not swinging, just sitting there on their phone. And I said, did that kid look like they're having fun? Like there's little ways to work in lessons for your child over time that's relevant to their life. And so I just want parents to try to delay and delay in society, delay together, which will make it easier for everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. Um, Real quick before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask, where can my listeners find your podcast? What's the best platform to find it on?
Mhm.
Maybe I know you have sometimes you have petitions for parents to sign.
Yeah.
Are there any of those to sign and whatnot?
There is a petition coming in later in April, and so keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure when this is going live, but yeah, those I announce on all the platforms. But so scrollingtodeath.com with a number 2 is where you'll find all of the long form podcast interviews. I've redone my website and I'm launching that any day now. And so the search functionality will be greatly improved. And so you'll be able to search by any term that you are interested in or wanting to learn about and find content related to that, which is very exciting. And I am active on Instagram, connecting with parents there, scrolling to death. And then YouTube also has all the long form and short form content. And then personally, I'm on LinkedIn, which I've found like a really good community there of advocates. And so encourage parents to engage in those conversations on LinkedIn as time allows. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's where I found you, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's pretty good. Then I'll wrap up the show. Thanks for joining me in this week's episode of the Parent Tech Support Show, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jack.